The ledger arrived like a whisper. A single encrypted file slipped into Victoria Kane's secure inbox.
Victoria ran compliance for a private bank that promised discretion to the wealthy. Her work was pattern recognition, incentive mapping, and the slow arithmetic of trust.
This file read Client Update 09 and contained a network of transfers routed through shell companies, stablecoin conversions, and nominee accounts. Her screen lit with microsecond timestamps and correspondent bank routing that should not have aligned. Offshore flows threaded Gibraltar, Malta, Panama, and obscure fintech gateways in Southeast Asia. Each transfer was a surgical whisper of liquidity. Small amounts, repeated, timed to payroll runs and charity auctions. Victoria's training told her thresholds, limits, and red flags. Tonight, the red flags turned into a pattern, a string of fractional transfers that formed a ladder of influence. The beneficiary field read simply, "For Elena." Victoria tapped the PDF metadata and watched the note flash, a sigil stamped into document properties, a mark she'd seen only in closed forums where hedge funds traded gossip like currency. She felt the first chill of recognition. The ledger was intimate. It read like a lover's ledger, weaving affection into finance. It used classic laundering techniques, layering, conversion, integration, but with a personal grammar. Birthdays, anniversaries, a shipping escrow on the same day as an unofficial holiday. Someone was moving capital to protect a person, not a portfolio, and they were doing it with surgical discretion. Victoria cross-referenced names. Rafael Solano surfaced repeatedly, a name tied to museums, rare art acquisitions, and offshore trusts. Rafael's accounts flowed like a secret river through a map of nominees and boutique trust officers. Victoria traced microtransactions that fed concierge services, yacht maintenance, and an unlisted safety deposit. The transfers were clever. Convert to stablecoin, dust across wallets, then redeploy as payroll in jurisdictions slow to cooperate. She pulled up Elena's archived client notes. A dinner photograph linked Elena to Rafael at a gala 2 years earlier. Information turned into motive. Elena had reasons. Rafael had enemies. Someone was disguising shelter as bookkeeping. Victoria pinged Marcus Hunt in investigations. He arrived at the office, composed and sharp, and scanned her screen. "This is delicate," he said. "We can open a quiet review or escalate. We need legal." Victoria paused. Quiet reviews preserved client relationships but let networks reform. Legal exposure could blow it all into public scandal. "If we wait, the ledger rewrites itself," Victoria said. "If we expose it poorly, we destroy lives and the truth vanishes in courtroom theater." Marcus agreed to a narrow approach. Trace the nodes, slow the rails, and watch who moves. They watched. The ledger pulsed. Small transfers nudged market behavior. A micro-buy in a port services company preceded a contract award tied to Rafael's shipping interests. Influence laundering, converting affection into leverage, was the new craft. Victoria realized the network used emotion as collateral, and collateral behaved like capital. It could be seized, leveraged, or weaponized. She found a crypto address feeding a layered mixer. The trail re-emerged as payroll in a city where regulation lagged. Each relay was a rehearsal, a test. The vault, or whoever curated the sigil, favored theatrical discretion. Tiny shocks to test reactions. Someone then sent Victoria a photograph of a yacht with dusk light on its rail and a caption, "Safe." It was a message and a lesson. Victoria felt the ledger close around her like a hand. She visited Elena under a thin sun in a coastal cafe. Elena looked tired and defended, a woman who had learned secrecy as survival.
Elena admitted to hiding money to shield Raphael, who faced charges and threats overseas. I moved funds because I thought safety was currency, she said, voice rough with tiredness. I thought if he had money, he'd be safe from the men who wanted him dead. Victoria pressed the technical corners. Why split into stable coins and then back to fiat? Why use 5 jurisdictions? Who instructed the nominations? Elena looked at her hands, the story tightening into silence. It wasn't just me, she said. There were instructions, notes, a symbol left on papers when I signed. She drew a tiny sigil on the condensation of her cup, a variant Victoria had seen in the metadata. They told me to sign. They said it would keep him safe. I thought they'd only want shelter. She began to triangulate sources. Raphael's art purchases linked to an auction house. A trustee in Panama linked to a yacht broker. A concierge firm that handled Raphael's travel maintained accounts within the same shell network. Every thread led to others, and each node pulsed with transactional intimacy. The ledger was not just an accounting device, it was a love map converted into capital flows. The bank's internal communications hummed with concern. Marcus scheduled a quiet board call, lawyers prepared neutral language, regulators stirred, correspondent banks flagged unusual counterparties. News outlets sniffed a story and published speculative pieces that sanitized tenderness into tax avoidance. Victoria knew better. She watched transaction feeds and the market tremors that followed certain payments, a ripple in a microcap, a tiny spike in commodity forwards, a cascade of margin notices elsewhere. Someone was using money to sculpt behavior, buying influence with the precision of a lover learning another's habits. The ledger was a scalpel. At 2:13 a.m., an untraceable call played one sentence on her secure line. If you publish, you will lose everything. The voice was flat, the promise thinly veiled. Victoria stood at her desk, the city's lights like pinpricks. She imagined Elena on a distant shore, Raphael hidden beneath layers of identity. She thought of the bank, of her career woven into protocols, and of a ledger that turned affection into weaponized wealth. She could expose the network and be crushed by legal fallout, or she could use the ledger's public gravity to force custodians to act. She chose neither immediately. Instead, she built a controlled exposure, one carefully designed to force coordinated action without summoning spectacle. Victoria drafted a redacted brief for a select regulatory cell, framing anomalies as audit concerns and highlighting dependency chains between trustees and service providers. The memo was surgical. It demanded a choice across jurisdictions, cooperate or face cascading holds. The response was measured. A boutique trust delayed a release. A broker paused settlement. An auditor in Jersey flagged the chain. The ledger's channels narrowed but did not break. The network adapted. Transfers fractured into tinier rails, art as value transfers masked movement, and crypto dust migrated to new addresses. The resilience lay in human pledges as much as legal shells. Victoria sat with Marcus and counsel, watching chain of custody maps. "We bought time," Marcus said, "not victory." Counsel warned of reputational damage. Victoria argued that silence let the network migrate. If we don't expose links between trustees and political actors, they reroute. They fed regulators narrow, precise evidence. Auditors expanded inquiries into patterns, microtransaction timing, hospitality ledgers, narrative clues embedded in client notes. It became forensic finance, psychology, and cash flow combined. Late, an encrypted image landed. Raphael at a private viewing, the sigil faint in the corner. The caption read,
You saw. Now what will you do? The photograph was a test. Victoria felt the ledger's lesson coil. Enforcement could slow channels, but power lived in networks that monetized affection.
She had closed one passage, nudged custodians into compliance, and stalled a dangerous flow. The bank had won a skirmish. The lover's ledger would adapt.
Victoria slipped the photo into her wallet and walked into the rain, thinking of anchors and quiet accounts. She understood now that when love could be encoded into transfers, compliance required more than rules.